Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In the imposing New York courtroom, bathed in the cold light of stained glass windows, a heavy silence reigned. The marble walls and massive wood paneling seemed to absorb every whisper, every breath. In the center, on the dais, Judge Olivia Thompson, a black woman in her 40s, stood straight, commanding yet calm. Her reputation for rigor and integrity preceded her every step. Facing her was Vanessa Caldwell, a young heiress from one of the city's wealthiest families. Dressed in an impeccable designer outfit, her hair perfectly styled, she made no attempt to hide her contempt. From the start of the hearing, Vanessa had been delivering arrogant glances, stifled laughter, and sarcastic remarks. "You're not even on my level," she had coldly snapped at the judge, sending a chill through the courtroom. The murmurs turned into anxious whispers. The air seemed charged with electricity, a confrontation between the arrogance born of wealth and the legitimate authority of justice. Judge Thompson, unperturbed, feigned not to notice the provocation, but her eyes shone with silent determination. When Vanessa continued to speak over her, challenging every procedure, every word spoken by the judge, a heavy silence suddenly fell. Olivia Thompson took a deep breath, her hands settling firmly on the lectern. Everyone in the courtroom sensed that the decisive moment was approaching. Then, in a clear, measured voice, yet with a sharp intensity, she pronounced the sentence. What followed left the entire court, and soon the whole country, speechless. A lesson in dignity, justice, and humility that no one was ready to forget. The Manhattan courthouse was buzzing that morning. Journalists, intrigued by the trial of a wealthy heiress, filled the public gallery, cameras trained on every move. Some were there for the scandal, others to make an example of her. But no one expected what was about to happen. Vanessa Caldwell entered the room, her heels clicking on the polished parquet floor like a metronome of provocation. Her gaze swept condescendingly over the assembly until it settled on Olivia Thompson, the Chief Justice. She gave a mocking smile. "Oh, you're quite young for this position," she said dismissively. "You've probably never seen anything like it in your life." The murmur in the room rose. Olivia Thompson, usually calm and experienced, raised an eyebrow but didn't respond immediately. She let Vanessa fuss, certain that justice must be served with impartiality and patience, even in the face of the most blatant arrogance. Sensing she was in control, Vanessa continued her provocative behavior. She spoke over the witnesses, made sarcastic remarks to the lawyers, and even laughed contemptuously when one of the jurors asked a relevant question. The murmurs in the courtroom turned into worried whispers. Many were beginning to feel that Vanessa's behavior would backfire on her. Olivia Thompson finally rose. The snap of her dress echoed through the courtroom, imposing an instant silence. All eyes turned to her. Her deep, determined black eyes fixed on Vanessa with an intensity that sent shivers down the spines of the spectators. "Miss Caldwell," she began in a calm but firm voice, "the court does not tolerate contempt, neither for its procedures nor for those who serve them." Vanessa smirked, expecting a simple reprimand. But Olivia didn't give her a chance to recover. "You can continue to think that wealth puts you above the law. But here, no one is above justice. Not me, not you, not anyone." At that moment, a chill ran through the courtroom. The judge's words were not merely a reprimand, they were a warning. Vanessa began to feel an unease she had never known before. For the first time, her arrogance had met a wall she could not breach. And that was just the beginning. Vanessa Caldwell's blatant arrogance was beginning to waver. She didn't realize it yet, but the courtroom had shifted from stunned silence to anxious anticipation. Every spectator held their breath, knowing that Judge Olivia Thompson was not one to let provocations go unpunished. Olivia picked up a thick folder from the desk in front of her. Slowly, she opened a document she had carefully prepared, while Vanessa impatiently rocked back and forth in her chair, a sarcastic smile on her lips. "Miss Caldwell," Olivia continued in a clear and measured voice, "you allow yourself to disrespect this court, its witnesses, and its jurors, simply because you come from a rich and influential family." Vanessa chuckled, but her voice suddenly seemed less confident. I'm just talking," she stammered, trying to hide her rising irritation. Olivia raised her hand and judged her with a look that cut short any attempt at justification. "Speaking doesn't mean insulting, nor does it mean obstructing a trial. And when you use your wealth as a shield to despise others, you expose yourself to the reality of justice." The murmur in the room became a collective shiver. Journalists frantically jotted down notes, capturing every word of this historic confrontation. Vanessa felt, for the first time, that the arrogance that had always been her armor was beginning to crack. Olivia continued, relentless, "You tried to ridicule honest witnesses, destabilize the jury, and treat me with condescension. But know this, here, no one laughs at the expense of justice." Vanessa, now slightly pale, tried to reply, You don't understand." Olivia cut her off with a firm gesture, "No, Miss Caldwell. You're the one who doesn't understand. Justice isn't measured by your bank account or your pedigree. It's measured by your actions and your responsibility before the law." The court held its breath. Vanessa, who had believed she could manipulate every situation with her arrogance, was beginning to feel the fear of public humiliation. The winds of change were already blowing toward her, and Olivia Thompson was the cyclone that no amount of wealth could stop. At that moment, everyone in the room understood that the judge had a plan. A plan that would transform arrogance into a lesson, and leave the whole world speechless. The silence in the courtroom was almost palpable. Every eye was fixed on Judge Olivia Thompson, whose command of the court was becoming evident. Vanessa Caldwell, still outwardly arrogant, nevertheless felt an invisible weight bearing down on her shoulders. Olivia took a deep breath and addressed Vanessa's lawyer, "Mr. Reynolds, I would like us to review your client's conduct during this hearing and throughout the legal proceedings." The lawyer, visibly nervous, nodded. Vanessa, confused, frowned. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice betraying a concern she was trying to hide. Olivia smiled slightly, but her eyes shone with a sharp intensity. "Miss Caldwell, you have told this court that you and your family are above the law. Yet your past actions tell a very different story." Murmurs spread through the room. Vanessa felt her fingers grow sweaty. What actions?" she stammered, feeling the situation slipping out of her control. Olivia turned to the jury and the public. "The records show that your behavior is not an isolated incident. In your family businesses, several employees were intimidated, humiliated, and fired without justification. Customers were deceived, and witnesses were silenced out of fear." A murmur of shock rippled through the room. Vanessa tried to protest, "These are just exaggerations." But Olivia wouldn't let her speak. "These aren't exaggerations. These are documented facts. And today, you repeated these behaviors in this courtroom." Vanessa, red with anger and humiliation, tried to defend herself, but her voice trembled. I. Olivia raised her hand, imposing silence. "Miss Caldwell, this court has never been a stage for your whims. And I wish to remind everyone that justice is not influenced by wealth, beauty, or social status. Here, every action has a consequence." The journalists' cameras captured every word. Social media was about to explode with this historic confrontation. Vanessa, for the first time, realized that she wasn't facing just any judge, but a woman whose vision of justice was unwavering. And that moment marked the beginning of a public reckoning that would leave the entire world speechless. Vanessa Caldwell had always believed that her wealth and influence could open any door for her. But in that courtroom, facing Olivia Thompson, every mocking smile, every arrogant gesture seemed to backfire. Olivia rose and walked slowly toward Vanessa's desk, each step echoing a reminder of the authority she embodied. "Miss Caldwell," she began in a calm but penetrating voice, "you have attempted to ridicule the court. Now, we will examine your arguments and actions through the lens of the law, not your social standing." Vanessa, ever arrogant, rolled her eyes. "You don't understand. I haven't done anything wrong," she protested. Olivia didn't respond immediately. She opened a file and began to list, with surgical precision, every action Vanessa had taken that could be interpreted as an abuse or disregard for procedures. She cited witness statements, internal emails, and Vanessa's repeated behaviors, weaving an irrefutable web of evidence. With each quote, Vanessa felt the room draw closer to her, as if each of Olivia's words was a light exposing her mistakes. The murmurs of the audience turned into respectful silence. Even the journalists understood that this confrontation went beyond a simple conflict, it was a lesson in humility and justice. "You can continue to think that your wealth protects you," Olivia continued, "but here, it's of no use to you. True justice knows neither your name nor your fortune. It only knows your actions." Vanessa, now visibly flustered, tried to reply, This isn't fair." Olivia cut her off with a slow, firm gesture. "Justice has never been fair to those who ignore it. It has never been lenient to those who believe themselves to be above others. And today, you will learn that arrogance is fragile in the face of truth." At that moment, Vanessa realized that every mocking whisper she had uttered, every condescending laugh, every sarcastic remark was coming back to haunt her. She felt exposed, vulnerable, and for the first time in her life, she understood that she had no control. And Olivia Thompson, with calm and majesty, had just transformed a simple hearing into a moment that would be etched in memory. The whole world would soon witness the quiet power of justice in the face of arrogance. The hearing had reached a point of tension unlike anything anyone in the courtroom had ever experienced. Every spectator held their breath, aware that Judge Olivia Thompson was preparing for a historic moment. Vanessa Caldwell, though always impeccably dressed and adorned with sparkling jewelry, felt the air around her grow colder. The arrogance that had guided her until then was slowly fading away. Olivia Thompson rose slowly, letting her eyes scan the courtroom. Her gaze settled on Vanessa, piercing, implacable. "Miss Caldwell," she began firmly, "this court finds that your behavior, your provocations, and your disregard for due process warrant punishment." Vanessa smirked, thinking it was just a simple fine or a mild reprimand. "A small punishment, isn't it?" she murmured to her lawyer. But Olivia wasn't joking. "You are sentenced to participate in a series of public awareness sessions on justice and equality for all. You will attend without privilege or special treatment. Every interaction you have must reflect the respect and dignity you have refused until now." A murmur of shock rippled through the room. The journalists began to write frantically, the wealthy heiress humiliated by the black judge. Vanessa turned pale. What? You mean, in front of everyone?" Olivia nodded slowly, her expression grave. "Yes. In front of the public, in front of the media, in front of those you have despised. You will learn that true authority cannot be bought. It is earned and respected." The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Even Vanessa's lawyers seemed stunned. For the first time, Vanessa felt the power of justice overwhelm her. Every word from Olivia was a lesson in humility that no amount of wealth could erase. The judge stood for a moment, letting the weight of her decision permeate the room. Then, with a simple but solemn gesture, she struck her gavel, bang, the sound echoed through the marble walls. Vanessa, frozen in place, understood then that this moment would mark her for the rest of her life. And that the whole world would watch this lesson in dignity and justice, impressed by the courage and intelligence of Judge Olivia Thompson. The days following the sentencing were a shock for Vanessa Caldwell. Every newspaper article, every television report recounted the public humiliation she had suffered in court. Social media erupted, hashtags and comments full of harsh criticism poured in from everywhere. For the first time, the young, wealthy heiress faced adversity that no amount of money could overcome. Vanessa was still trying to keep her head held high, but every interaction with those around her reminded her of her downfall. Her friends, once admiring of her status and wealth, were beginning to look at her with a distance mixed with curiosity and judgment. Family gatherings had become silent ordeals, punctuated by reproachful glances. Meanwhile, Judge Olivia Thompson continued to oversee the execution of the sentence. Vanessa had to attend several public hearings, meet with witnesses, listen to victims of prejudice, and finally understand the impact of her actions. Each encounter was a harsh mirror reflecting her past arrogance. During her first public session, Vanessa entered a community room filled with people who had experienced injustices similar to those she had ignored or perpetrated. She felt their eyes on her, some curious, others accusatory. For the first time, her arrogant words failed to impress. She had to listen, learn, and behave respectfully. An old woman approached her, her face etched with years and experience. "Miss Caldwell," she said calmly but firmly, "you cannot erase what you have done, but you can choose to act differently from today onward. Arrogance builds nothing, understanding and respect do." Vanessa lowered her eyes. Those simple yet powerful words struck harder than any public criticism. She was beginning to understand that her wealth had never protected her from moral judgment. The whole world watched this transformation, fascinated by how Judge Olivia Thompson, with intelligence and dignity, had transformed arrogant arrogance into a public lesson in humility. And Vanessa, despite herself, was beginning to learn that true power lies not in money, but in respect and integrity. The following weeks were trying for Vanessa Caldwell. Each public session she attended revealed a reality she had always ignored. The young heiress, once self-assured and disdainful, began to perceive the depth of the injustices around her. During a meeting with young women from modest backgrounds who faced discrimination, Vanessa felt something shift within her. Their stories were poignant, filled with courage despite the obstacles. She observed in silence, unable to cut them off sarcastically as she would have done before. After the session, Olivia Thompson watched her, silent, but with an almost imperceptible smile, as if to signal that Vanessa should reflect on what she had just heard. The judge knew that lessons in humility take time, but that direct confrontation with reality was the best way to wound a person's pride. This time, Vanessa found no justification in her words or her status. She went home alone, and for the first time, she reflected on her behavior in court. The public humiliations and media criticism seemed almost insignificant compared to the pain of realizing she had disregarded human lives. She found herself rereading the articles and online comments about her trial. Instead of getting angry, she observed, almost with shame, her mistakes. Her arrogance, which had been her hallmark, was beginning to crack. One evening, standing in front of her mirror, Vanessa murmured, maybe I was wrong." It was a barely audible whisper, but it was the first sign of awareness. For the first time, she realized that true power lay not in wealth, but in respect, humility, and dignity. The world, silent and attentive, watched the slow but real transformation of Vanessa Caldwell. Thanks to the intelligence and patience of Judge Olivia Thompson, arrogance began to give way to reflection. Vanessa Caldwell entered the municipal conference room, where the press and community members were waiting for her first public statement since the trial. Cameras were trained on her, microphones were open, and every word she uttered would be scrutinized. For a long time, she had imagined this moment as a scene of triumph, where she could control history. But today, faced with reality, she understood that she could not manipulate public opinion or perceptions. She had to speak with honesty and humility. Taking a deep breath, Vanessa began, "I came here today to acknowledge my mistakes. My behavior in court, and before that, in my professional and personal life, was unacceptable. I ignored others, abused my position and wealth, and I failed to respect the rules that apply to everyone." A silence fell over the room. The journalists were frantically taking notes, but this time it wasn't to report spectacular arrogance, but the beginning of redemption. Olivia Thompson, who was in attendance, watched with satisfaction. She knew that real change required more than just punishment, it required deep and public introspection. Vanessa continued, "I now understand that a person's true worth is not measured by the money they possess, but by their ability to respect, listen to, and learn from others. I commit to acting differently, to supporting those I have despised, and to being mindful of the impact of my actions." Murmurs of approval rippled through the room. Some spectators, previously skeptical or disdainful, began to applaud softly. Vanessa felt the weight of humiliation transform into the beginnings of liberation. For the first time, she realized that Judge Olivia Thompson's lesson had gone beyond the courtroom. It was no longer just about humiliation or punishment, it was a true moral and human awakening. As the cameras captured every moment, Vanessa took a step forward, her shoulders straight but humble, and concluded, I am ready to learn, to change, and to earn back the trust and respect I have lost. The whole world, witnessing this transformation, began to see not an arrogant heiress, but a person capable of genuine introspection and growth. A few weeks after her public confession, Vanessa Caldwell began to put her commitments into practice. Each day was an ordeal. She had to interact with people she had once despised and face situations where her natural arrogance might have resurfaced. Her first assignment was to work with an association for disadvantaged youth, which Judge Olivia Thompson had personally recommended. Vanessa was to participate in mentoring workshops, listen to the young people's stories, and propose solutions to help them overcome their obstacles. At first, she felt uneasy. The young people looked at her suspiciously, some whispering to their friends, "She's rich, she doesn't understand our life." Vanessa felt panic rising, but she forced herself to listen, to understand, and to respond sincerely. A teenager, Marcus, dared to tell him, "You may have money, but that doesn't change your past. You ignored and judged us." Vanessa lowered her eyes, touched by the raw truth. "You're right, Marcus. I can't erase my mistakes, but I can learn from them and try to do better." The weeks passed, and each humble action she performed strengthened her respect for others and for herself. She began to understand the true meaning of power and influence, to help, protect, and inspire, rather than to dominate or humiliate. Olivia Thompson, who had been closely following Vanessa's progress, noted with satisfaction the young heiress's advancements. She knew that profound change takes time, but Vanessa had taken a crucial step. She had acknowledged her mistakes and was actively committed to making amends. When Vanessa returned home that evening, she gazed at her reflection in the mirror. She was no longer the arrogant, haughty woman she once was. Her face now reflected determination, humility, and a desire for redemption. She understood that true wealth lies not in money or status, but in the capacity to grow, to change, and to respect others. The world, which had witnessed her downfall, was now beginning to see a sincere and inspiring transformation. Vanessa Caldwell was no longer just an heiress, she was becoming someone who deserved respect, not for her wealth, but for her actions. The courtroom was now just a memory for Vanessa Caldwell, but its impact on her life and on the public remained indelible. After weeks of work, reflection, and public appearances, she had changed profoundly. The arrogant and disdainful young heiress had become a woman aware of her responsibilities, respectful and humble. The day Olivia Thompson organized a final meeting in the courtroom was symbolic. Journalists were present, but this time the room was filled with respect and admiration, rather than scandal and curiosity. Olivia stood facing Vanessa, her eyes shining with quiet pride. "Miss Caldwell," she said calmly, "you have come a long way. You have faced your mistakes, listened to those you had despised, and taken concrete steps to change." Vanessa, standing before the judge, felt an emotion she had never known, gratitude and humility. "I still have much to learn," she admitted sincerely. "But thanks to your teachings and this experience, I finally understand what it means to respect justice and others." A respectful silence filled the room. Then Olivia smiled slightly. "Justice is not just a matter of law. It is also a matter of conscience, responsibility, and dignity. You have proven that even those who are deeply mistaken can learn, grow, and rectify their errors." The cameras captured this historic moment. The whole world witnessed Vanessa Caldwell's transformation, and her story quickly became a symbol of humility, redemption, and justice. As she left the courthouse, Vanessa felt a newfound peace. She had understood that true greatness comes neither from money nor status, but from the ability to acknowledge one's mistakes and act for the greater good. And behind her, Judge Olivia Thompson remained an inspiring figure, an embodiment of strength, wisdom, and justice. The whole world, which had witnessed Vanessa's fall and transformation, was left speechless, amazed by the power of humility and true justice.